Welcome to Cheating Story Exposed. Please subscribe. My name is Thomas Brennan, and at 63 years old, I've learned that the most powerful moves in life are the ones nobody sees coming. Today, I'm sharing a story about marriage, betrayal, and the particular kind of clarity that comes with age, the ability to see what's really happening while everyone assumes you're too old, too comfortable, or too blind to notice. This story begins about 6 months before everything came to light, though I suppose the seeds were planted long before that. My wife Catherine and I had been married for 19 years. It was a second marriage for both of us. I'd been widowed at 42 when my first wife Margaret passed from cancer, and Catherine had been divorced for several years when we met at a charity fundraiser in 2005. We weren't young and foolish. We were mature adults who thought we knew what we were getting into. Catherine was 58 when this story takes place, still beautiful in that refined way some women carry into their later years. She'd been a paralegal for most of her career, sharp and organized, the kind of person who kept detailed calendars and never forgot an appointment. We had a comfortable life in a 4-bedroom colonial in Westchester County, nothing extravagant, but solid. The house was mine from before the marriage, purchased during my years as a civil engineer for the county, but Catherine had made it feel like home again after Margaret's death left it feeling like a mausoleum. We didn't have children together. She had a daughter, Penelope, from her first marriage, 34 years old, living in Boston, cordial but distant with me. I had 2 sons from my first marriage, both in their late 30s, both living out west with families of their own. We were content with that arrangement, or so I thought. Our life had a pleasant rhythm: morning coffee together, evenings where she'd read while I worked on restoration projects in my workshop. Weekends spent antiquing or visiting the farmer's market. Then slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, things began to shift. It started with Catherine spending more time on her phone. Now, I'm not some technologically illiterate old fool. I may be in my 60s, but I've kept up reasonably well. I know how smartphones work, understand social media basics, can manage my own email and banking. But Catherine's phone usage changed in quality, not just quantity. She'd smile at the screen in a way she hadn't in years. She'd take calls in other rooms. She'd tilt the screen away when I came near, casual but deliberate. I didn't say anything. One thing age teaches you is patience. Rush to conclusions and you make a fool of yourself. Wait, observe, and the truth reveals itself. The distance grew in other ways. Our conversations became transactional, discussing bills, household matters, schedules. The warmth drained out slowly, like water from a tub with a leak you can't quite locate. She'd come to bed later, always with an excuse about finishing a book or watching the end of a show. Our physical relationship, never passionate at our age but still present and affectionate, disappeared entirely. When I'd reach for her hand while watching television, she'd hold it for a polite moment, then find a reason to get up. By month 4, she'd started going out more. Book club on Tuesdays, which had always been her night but now ran later. Coffee with former colleagues on Thursday mornings that stretched into lunch. Weekend afternoons helping a friend. She'd mention names I didn't recognize, people I'd supposedly met at parties I couldn't recall attending. I'm not a suspicious man by nature. My first marriage had been rock solid until cancer took Margaret from me, and I'd approached my second marriage assuming the same foundation of trust. But I'm also not blind, and I'm certainly not stupid. At 63, I'd lived long enough to recognize the signs of someone creating space in their life for something they don't want you to see. Still, I waited, I watched, and I said nothing. The breakthrough came on a Tuesday in early October. Catherine had left for her book club at 6:30, wearing more makeup than usual and a new blouse I'd never seen. She'd kissed my cheek absently, told me not to wait up, and disappeared into the cool autumn evening. I sat in my workshop that night, not really working, just thinking. My workshop had been my sanctuary since Margaret died, a converted garage space filled with half-restored furniture, shelves of wood stain and varnish, tools organized with the precision of someone who finds comfort in order. I'd been refinishing a Victorian writing desk for 3 months, and that night I sat there with sandpaper in my hand, not moving, just listening to the house settle around me. Around 9:30, I heard Catherine's car pull into the driveway. That was odd. Book club usually ran until at least 10. I heard her come in through the front door, heard her footsteps move quickly upstairs. No call of greeting, no stop in the workshop to say hello. Just straight upstairs. Something in my gut tightened. I waited 15 minutes, then went inside. The house was quiet. Light showed under our bedroom door. I climbed the stairs slowly. My knees aren't what they once were, and the third step creaks unless you know to step on the left side. I knocked softly on our bedroom door. "Catherine, everything all right?" A pause, longer than it should have been. "Fine, just tired. I think I'm coming down with something." Her voice sounded strange, tight. I opened the door. She was in bed already, facing away from me, blankets pulled up high despite the room being warm. "Book club end early." Just wasn't feeling well." I stood there for a moment, looking at the shape of her under the covers, the tension in her shoulders visible even from across the room. Her phone sat on the nightstand, screen down, which she never did. "All right," I said. "Let me know if you need anything." I slept in the guest room that night. Told myself it was consideration, not wanting to disturb her if she was ill. But really it was because something had broken in that moment, some final thread of willful ignorance I'd been clinging to. The next morning, Catherine was up and out early. She left a note saying she had errands to run, would be back by afternoon. I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee, staring at her neat handwriting, and made a decision. I called my son, Patrick. He's the elder of my 2 boys, 40 years old, works in software security out in Seattle. We talk every couple of weeks, video chat on holidays. Good man, sensible, inherited his mother's practical nature. "Dad, everything okay? It's 6:30 your time." "I'm fine, son, but I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. If you thought your marriage was in trouble, what would you do?" There was a long pause. "Dad, is everything all right with you and Catherine?" I told him everything, the distance, the phone, the schedule changes, the cold shoulder. He listened without interrupting, which is a skill he learned from his mother. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. "Dad, I'm not going to tell you to jump to conclusions, but I'm also not going to tell you to ignore your instincts. You're one of the smartest men I know. If something feels wrong, it probably is. So what do I do? You protect yourself, quietly. You make sure that if this is going where you think it's going, you're not caught flat-footed. Do you want me to come out there?" "No, not yet. But I wanted someone to know what I'm thinking in case I'm not crazy." "You're not crazy, Dad. Trust yourself." That conversation gave me something I'd been lacking, permission to trust my own judgment. We spend so much time in marriage telling ourselves we must be wrong, we must be imagining things, we must be the problem. Sometimes you need someone else to say, "No, your perception is valid." I spent the next 2 weeks becoming a student of my own life. I paid attention to patterns. Catherine's Thursday morning coffee dates always meant she was gone from 9 until 2. Her book club Tuesdays meant 7 until 10:30. The weekend afternoons helping friends were Saturday or Sunday, 2 to 6. I started taking note of mileage on her car. Started noticing that her errands, that should have taken her to the grocery store 12 miles away, somehow added 40 miles to the odometer. Started seeing that she showered and changed clothes after book club, which seemed unnecessary for sitting around discussing novels. I didn't confront her. Confrontation is a young man's game. At my age, you learn that information is more valuable than accusation. Let people think they're getting away with something and they get careless. Push too early and they just get better at hiding. 3 weeks after that conversation with Patrick, I did something I'm not particularly proud of, but necessity outweighs pride sometimes. Catherine had gone out for one of her Thursday coffee dates. I went into our bedroom and looked at her nightstand drawer. I wasn't sure what I was looking for. Evidence? Confirmation? Maybe just something to tell me I was wrong, that I was a paranoid old man creating problems where none existed. What I found was a receipt, crumpled at the back of the drawer, dated 2 weeks prior. Dinner for two at a restaurant in Cold Spring, 40 minutes north of our house. The total was $183. We hadn't eaten at a restaurant in over a month. Catherine had been home that entire evening. I remembered because we'd watched a documentary together about the national parks, except she hadn't been home. She'd gone out that afternoon to help a friend move some furniture, and had come back around 9, apologetic about being so late, saying the friend had insisted on ordering pizza. She'd showered immediately, said she felt grimy from all the moving. I stood there holding that receipt, and something crystallized in my mind. This wasn't suspicion anymore. This was fact. My wife of 19 years was having an affair. I put the receipt back exactly where I'd found it. Then I sat on the edge of our bed and did something I hadn't done since Margaret died. I wept. Not from devastation, I was past that. I wept from exhaustion, from the bone-deep tiredness of being old enough to know better and still being betrayed. We're supposed to be past this at our age. We're supposed to have figured out loyalty and commitment. We're supposed to be companions facing the final decades together, not playing out some midlife crisis drama. But I didn't wallow. I gave myself 10 minutes, then I washed my face, went down to my workshop, and made a plan. The thing about being a civil engineer for 35 years is that you learn to think systematically. You learn to see projects through from beginning to end. You learn to anticipate problems and build in solutions. You learn that foundation matters more than facade. So I started building my foundation. First, I called my lawyer. Nelson Pritchard had handled my estate planning after Margaret died, had drawn up the papers when Catherine and I married. He was my age, shrewd and discreet. Nelson, I need to understand something. Hypothetically, if my marriage were to end, what would Catherine be entitled to? Nelson didn't waste time with false comfort. Your house was purchased before the marriage with separate funds, so that's yours. Your pension from the county is yours. The retirement accounts you had before marriage are yours. But anything accumulated during the marriage joint savings, investments made with marital funds, appreciation on property that's potentially subject to division. Why are you asking, Thomas? I'm being careful. Good, careful is good at your age. Come see me next week, let's make. Sure all your ducks are in a row. I saw Nelson the following Tuesday while Catherine was at her book club. He reviewed everything. The news was better than I'd feared, because I'd been careful when we married, not romantic, but careful we'd kept most things separate. Joint checking for household expenses, but my retirement accounts, my pension, my house, all protected. Catherine had her own retirement account from her years as a paralegal. We'd lived comfortably but separately in financial terms. If it comes to divorce, Nelson said, you're looking at a fairly clean split. She'd have a claim on half the joint savings, about $40,000, and potentially some spousal support given the length of the marriage, but nothing catastrophic. You'd keep your house, your pension, your retirement funds. And if I wanted to, complicate things for someone. Nelson raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? If someone were, say, having an affair, and if that person were being supported financially by my wife using marital funds, would that affect anything? In New York, not as much as you'd think. We're a no-fault state, but it would certainly be interesting information to have. Are you thinking Catherine is supporting someone? I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out. Over the next 3 weeks, I became a detective in my own life. I didn't hire a private investigator, too expensive, too obvious, too much chance of Catherine finding out. Instead, I used the tools available to me. I set up the cloud backup on our shared computer to send copies to an email account she didn't know about. I started keeping a detailed calendar of her absences. I began taking photos of the odometer in her car each morning, tracking mileage, and I waited. The pattern became clear. Every Thursday, Catherine disappeared for 5 hours. The mileage suggested she was driving 40 to 50 miles. She'd return showered and in a good mood, almost guilty in her cheerfulness toward. Every other Saturday, similar pattern. Book club Tuesdays were legitimate. I verified that her friend Barbara did host a book club and Catherine did attend. But Thursdays and alternate Saturdays were something else entirely. Then came the November afternoon that changed everything. It was a Wednesday, unseasonably warm for mid-November, temperature in the high 50s. Catherine had left that morning saying she was meeting her daughter Penelope in the city for lunch and shopping, would be back by dinner. I'd nodded, kissed her cheek, told her to have fun. Around 2 in the afternoon, I was in my workshop when I heard a car pull up. I assumed Catherine had returned early, but when I looked out, it wasn't her Lexus. It was a silver Honda Accord, maybe 10 years old, pulling into my driveway. A man got out. Mid-40s, tall, fit in the way people who work with their hands stay fit. Dark hair, casual clothes, jeans, and a flannel shirt. He looked around, checking the address against something on his phone, then walked up to my front door and knocked. I came out of the workshop, wiping my hands on a rag. "Can I help you?" He turned, surprised. "Oh, hey, I'm looking for Catherine. Is she home?" "She's out for the day. Can I ask who you are?" "I'm Derek, friend of hers. She said I could stop by to pick up some books she had for me." Derek. The name hit me like a fist to the gut, not because I recognized it, I'd never heard it before, but because of the casual way he said it, the assumption that he could just stop by my house, the familiarity in his voice when he said my wife's name. I kept my face neutral. 63 years of life teaches you how to hide what you're feeling. "I don't think Catherine mentioned you, but she's got a lot of friends. You're welcome to wait inside if you'd like. She should be back in a few hours." I watched his face carefully. He hesitated, uncertain. "Nah, that's okay. I don't want to impose." "It's no imposition." "Come on in. I'm Thomas, by the way, Catherine's husband." His face paled slightly. "Oh, yeah, she's mentioned you. I should probably just come back another time." "Nonsense. Come in, I'll make some coffee." This is what age gives you, the ability to be gracious while you're planning 3 moves ahead, the ability to smile while you're calculating angles, the ability to invite the man your wife is sleeping with into your home and offer him coffee. Derek followed me inside, uncomfortable but unable to refuse without being overtly rude. I led him to the living room, the formal one we rarely used, with Catherine's good furniture and her carefully chosen art on the walls. "Have a seat. Coffee okay, or would you prefer tea?" "Coffee's fine, thanks." I went to the kitchen, measured out coffee grounds, filled the reservoir with water, and started the machine. My hands were steady. Inside, my mind was racing, but outside, I was just a polite older man being hospitable to his wife's friend. When I returned to the living room, Derek was sitting on the edge of the sofa, looking like he wanted to bolt. I settled into my armchair, the one I'd sat in thousands of times while Catherine read on the couch. The irony wasn't lost on me. "So, Derek, how do you know Catherine?" "We met through mutual friends, few months back." "That's nice." "She's been spending a lot more time with friends lately. I'm glad she's getting out more. At our age, it's important to maintain social connections." He nodded, saying nothing. "What do you do, Derek?" "I'm a contractor, residential renovations mostly. Good work, honest work. I was a civil engineer myself before retirement. There's something satisfying about building things, isn't there? Creating something permanent." The coffee finished brewing. I poured 2 cups, brought them back. Handed him one, settled back into my chair. "How old are you, Derek, if you don't mind my asking?" 46, 12 years younger than. Catherine, 17 years younger than me. I sipped my coffee, letting the silence stretch. "You married, Derek?" "Divorced, 3 years ago." "That's hard, I'm sorry to hear it. My first wife passed away back in 2003, cancer. Catherine's my second marriage, 19 years now. Derek shifted uncomfortably. That's a long time. It is. Though honestly the last few months have been strange. Catherine's been distant, distracted. I've been trying to figure out what's wrong, if it's something I've done, if she's unhappy. You know how it is in marriage, you try to read signals, understand what's not being said. I watched his face. He'd gone very still, coffee cup frozen halfway to his lips. But maybe it's just part of getting older, I continued, my voice conversational, almost philosophical. Maybe people change. Maybe what they want at 58 isn't what they wanted at 39. Maybe they start looking around and thinking about what might have been, what could still be. Do you think that's true, Derek? He set his coffee down. Mr. Brennan, I think I should go. Oh, but Catherine will be so disappointed she missed you, and you haven't told me about these books she has for you. What kind of books? I don't remember, just some books. That's odd. Catherine's very organized about her books. She'd remember exactly which ones she promised to someone. Unless... I paused, let the silence hang. Unless the books were just an excuse, a reason to stop by, a reason she'd given you to explain why you might be at her house. Derek stood up. I really need to go. I stood as well, slower, using my age deliberately. Derek, sit down, please. Something in my voice made him pause. Not threat, I'm 63, he could snap me like kindling if he wanted. But authority. The weight of years, of moral high ground, of a man who knows he's right and isn't going to be dismissed. He sat, I remained standing, looking down at him. I'm going to... Tell you what's going to happen, Derek. You're going to walk out of my house, get in your car, and drive away. You're going to block Catherine's number. You're going to disappear from her life completely and immediately. And you're never going to contact her again. Mr. Brennan, I'm not finished. In exchange for that, I'm not going to do several things. I'm not going to call your business and tell your clients that you make a habit of sleeping with married women old enough to be your older sister. I'm not going to post your name and photo on social media with a detailed explanation of your character. And I'm not going to track down your ex-wife and have a conversation with her about why your marriage really ended. His face had gone white. You can't. I can, but I won't. Not if you walk away right now and stay away. Here's what you don't understand, Derek. I'm 63 years old. I'm retired. I have time, resources, and absolutely nothing to lose. You're 46, building a business, trying to rebuild your life after divorce. You have everything to lose, so we both know who has leverage here. I walked to the front door, opened it. Leave now, and Derek, Catherine doesn't know you came here. She doesn't know we met. Let's keep it that way. Because if she knows I confronted you, she'll know I know, and I'm not ready for her to know yet. He stood, walked to the door, paused. For what it's worth, she said you two barely talked anymore. That you were more roommates than married. For what it's worth, Derek, people having affairs always say that. It's how they justify what they're doing, doesn't make it true. He left. I watched him drive away, then I closed the door, walked back to my chair and sat down. My hands were shaking now, adrenaline, delayed reaction, but also satisfaction, because I'd just done something I never thought I'd have to do. I'd protected myself. Aggressively, definitively, Catherine came home at 6, cheerful and relaxed. How was your day? Quiet, I said. Fixed the loose hinge on the basement door, did some sanding, nothing exciting. She kissed my forehead. I picked up that pasta sauce you like, thought I'd make linguine for dinner. We ate dinner together, talking about nothing, her shopping trip, Penelope's new job, the weather forecast. Normal conversation between two people who'd been married 19 years. She seemed lighter somehow, more present than she'd been in months. I wondered if Derek had texted her, if she knew he'd been here. But her phone sat face up on the counter all evening, and she checked it only twice, casual glances at the time. That night, lying in our bed, I'd stopped using the guest room, not wanting to tip my hand. I stared at the ceiling and thought about what came next. I'd confronted the affair partner, but that didn't solve the larger problem. Catherine was still cheating. She was still lying. She still thought I was too old, too oblivious, too comfortable to notice or care. She had no idea what I'd already set in motion. No idea that Nelson was preparing papers. No idea that I'd documented everything. No idea that Derek was gone and wasn't coming back. The next morning, Thursday, Catherine announced she had her usual coffee date. "I'll be back around 2. Sounds good." I watched her drive away, then I made a call to Patrick. "I need you to come visit, this weekend if you can. There's something I need to do and I want family here when I do it." "Dad, what's happened?" I met him, the man she's been seeing, and I ended it. But now I need to end the marriage and I don't want to be alone when it all comes apart. Patrick didn't hesitate. "I'll be there Friday night." Catherine returned at 2 that afternoon in a terrible mood. Quiet, tense, red-eyed. She went straight upstairs. I heard her on the phone, voice low and urgent, but couldn't make out the words. At dinner, she picked at her food. "I'm not feeling well. I think I'm going to turn in early. Anything I can do?" "No, just need some sleep." Friday evening, Patrick arrived. Catherine was surprised but gracious, hugging him, asking about his flight. We ordered takeout, talked about safe topics, his work, his sister who was expecting their first child, repairs I was planning for the house come spring. After Catherine went to bed, Patrick and I sat in the living room. I told him everything, the pattern of absences, the receipt, Derek's visit, my confrontation. "Jesus, Dad. You played that perfectly, but what now?" Now I tell her I know. Now I file for divorce. Now I reclaim my life and stop pretending this marriage still exists. "Are you angry?" I thought about that. I was, but mostly I'm just tired. Tired of being lied to. Tired of being treated like I'm too old to notice. Tired of watching her smile at her phone while she barely speaks to me. I don't want revenge, Patrick. I want honesty. I want respect. And since I can't have those things in this marriage, I want out. Saturday morning, I asked Catherine to sit with me in the living room. Patrick made himself scarce, claiming he needed to make work calls. "Catherine, we need to talk." She looked wary. "About what?" "About Derek." The color drained from her face. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do. Derek stopped by Wednesday afternoon. We had coffee together. He told me about your mutual friends, about the books you promised him." She stood up. "Thomas, sit down, Catherine." She sat. "I know you've been having an affair. I've known for months. I've been waiting, documenting, preparing. Derek's gone. I made sure of that Wednesday, but the affair isn't really the point anymore. The point is that you've been lying to me for months. You've been treating me like I'm too old and stupid to notice. You've been using our marriage as a cover while you pursued something else." Tears started down her face. "It's not what you think." "I don't care what it is. I care that you lied. I care that you disrespected me. I care that at 63 years old I have to sit here and have this conversation instead of spending my retirement with someone who actually wants to be with me. I'm sorry. God, Thomas, I'm so sorry. It was a mistake. It's over. I'll end it." "It's already over. I ended it. What isn't over is this marriage, because I can't trust you anymore, Catherine, and without trust there's nothing left. Please, we can go to counseling. We can work through this." I stood up. "I've already filed for divorce. Nelson drew up the papers yesterday. You'll be served Monday. You have until the end of February to move out. That's 3 months, more than fair. After that, this house, my house, is off limits to you. You'll get half the joint savings and a small amount of spousal support for 2 years as mandated by New York law. After that, we're done." She was sobbing now. "Thomas, please, 19 years. You can't just throw that away." "I'm not throwing it away, Catherine. You already did." Patrick drove me to Nelson's office that Monday. Catherine was served papers at the house. By Tuesday, she'd moved into a hotel. By the end of January, the divorce was finalized. She didn't contest anything. Maybe she felt guilty. Maybe she just wanted it over. Maybe Derek had been more important to her than I realized, and once I'd ended that, she had no reason to fight for a marriage she'd already abandoned. I learned through mutual acquaintances that she'd tried to contact Derek multiple times after our talk. He never responded. She tried to track him down, showed up at his business. He told her in front of his employees that he wasn't interested in continuing whatever they'd had, that it had been a mistake, that she should leave him alone. I'd like to say I felt vindicated, but mostly I just felt sad. Sad that 19 years ended this way. Sad that at our age, we couldn't figure out how to be honest with each other. Sad that she'd chosen deception over conversation, affair over counseling, lies over respect. But I also felt free. For the first time in months, I could breathe. I could sit in my house without wondering where she was, who she was with, what she was hiding. I could answer my phone without her jumping. I could exist without the constant low-level anxiety of knowing something was wrong but not being able to address it. Patrick stayed 2 weeks, helping me adjust to being alone again. You did the right thing, Dad. You protected yourself. You demanded respect. That takes courage at any age. I'm 63, I said. I don't have time to waste on people who don't value me. Maybe that's the gift of age, knowing your worth and refusing to settle for less. It's been 8 months since the divorce finalized. I'm still in my house, still working in my workshop, still living my life. I've reconnected with old friends, joined a woodworking guild, started taking classes at the community college just for the intellectual stimulation. Catherine lives with her daughter in Boston now. We don't speak. I heard through her friend Barbara that she regrets everything, that she wishes she'd handled things differently. Maybe that's true. Maybe it's just what people say after the fact. I don't hate her. Hate takes energy I don't care to expend, but I don't forgive her either. Some things can't be forgiven, only accepted and moved past. What I learned from all this is something I wish I'd understood earlier. Age doesn't make you invisible. Experience doesn't make you stupid. Being 63 doesn't mean you can be taken advantage of, lied to, or disrespected. It means you've lived long enough to know what matters and strong enough to defend it. Catherine didn't see my move coming because she assumed I wouldn't make one. She assumed I'd be passive, accepting, too tired or too old or too comfortable to rock the boat. She learned otherwise, and Derek, he learned that age brings. Wisdom, and wisdom includes knowing exactly how to protect what's yours. I'm alone now, but I'm not lonely. I'm content in my solitude, surrounded by the things I've built and restored, both literally and figuratively. There's a postscript to this story that happened just last month in late October. I was at the farmer's market on a Saturday morning, something I'd started doing regularly after the divorce, enjoying the ritual of selecting fresh produce, chatting with vendors, feeling connected to my community in small, meaningful ways. I was examining heirloom tomatoes at Margaret Chen's stand when I heard a familiar voice behind me. Thomas Brennan. I turned to find Alina Walsh, a woman I'd known casually from my county engineering days. She'd been an architect on several projects we'd collaborated on in the 90s. I hadn't seen her in probably 15 years. Alina, what a pleasant surprise. She smiled, and I noticed she still had that same warm expression, though her hair had gone completely silver since I'd last seen her. She must have been around my age, maybe a year or two younger. I heard about you and Catherine, she said, direct in that way I remembered. I'm sorry. Thank you, though honestly it was the right thing. I believe that. I went through a divorce myself about 5 years ago. Hardest thing I ever did and the best decision I ever made. We talked for a few minutes, catching up. She was semi-retired, still doing consulting work, living in a condo in town. Before we parted, she touched my arm lightly. Thomas, would you like to have coffee sometime? Just as old friends. It's nice to see a familiar face. I hesitated for only a moment. I'd like that. We've had coffee 3 times now. Just coffee, just conversation. Nothing romantic, though I won't pretend I haven't noticed that talking to Alina feels easy in a way talking to Catherine hadn't felt in years. She laughs at my stories about restoration projects gone wrong. She tells me about her architectural work with a passion that reminds me why I loved engineering. We debate the merits of different coffee roasts and argue good-naturedly about whether modern architecture has lost its soul. I don't know if it will become something more. At 63, I'm not in a hurry. I've learned that rushing leads to mistakes, and patience reveals truth. But it's nice to have someone to talk to who sees me as I am, not as too old, not as past my prime, not as someone to be managed or deceived, but as a person with value, with interests, with things still to offer. My son Andrew, my younger boy, called me last week from California. "Dad, Patrick told me about this Alina woman. Are you dating?" I laughed. "I'm having coffee with a friend, Andrew. Let's not get ahead of ourselves." "Well, good. You deserve to be happy. And Dad, I'm proud of how you handled everything with Catherine. It took guts. It took necessity," I corrected. "But thank you. Last night, I was in my workshop finishing the Victorian writing desk I'd started before everything fell apart. The grain of the mahogany had finally revealed itself after months of careful sanding and staining. It was beautiful, rich, deep, with character that only emerges when you take the time to do things properly. As I applied the final coat of varnish, working the brush in long, even strokes, I thought about everything that had happened. The betrayal, the confrontation, the divorce, the rebuilding, and I realized something important. Catherine had underestimated me because she'd mistaken routine for weakness. She'd seen a man comfortable in his patterns, morning coffee, workshop time, quiet evenings, and assumed that meant I was passive, incapable of action, too set in my ways to change anything. What she didn't understand is that comfort and capability aren't opposites. I chose routine because I liked it, not because I was trapped by it. And when that routine was threatened, when my peace was disturbed by deception, I was perfectly capable of taking decisive action. Derek had underestimated me, too. He'd seen a 63-year-old retiree and assumed he was dealing with someone irrelevant, someone too old to fight back, too far past his prime to pose a threat. He learned otherwise in my living room that November afternoon. That's the mistake people make about age. They assume it diminishes you. They think retirement means you've stopped being formidable. They believe that gray hair and reading glasses equal weakness. They are wrong. Age doesn't diminish power, it refines it. At 63, I don't have the physical strength of my youth, but I have something more valuable. I have patience, perspective, and the accumulated wisdom of decades of experience. I know how to read people. I know how to plan. I know how to act decisively when action is required and wait strategically when waiting serves me better. I know my worth, and I refuse to accept less than I deserve. The writing desk is finished now, sitting in my workshop waiting for its new owner, a young couple expecting their first child, who want a special piece of furniture that will last generations. When they pick it up next week, they'll see a beautiful antique, expertly restored. They won't see the hours of patient work, the careful observation of grain and structure, the knowledge required to bring old wood back to life without damaging it. That's how I think of myself now. I'm like that desk maybe showing somewhere from the years, maybe not as flashy as something new and modern, but solid. Well built, carefully maintained, still useful, still valuable, still here. Catherine sent me an email 2 weeks ago, just a few lines. "Thomas, I've been doing a lot of thinking. I was wrong about so many things. I took you for granted. I assumed you'd always be there no matter how I treated you. I'm sorry for that. I hope you're well." I read it twice, then deleted it. Not out of anger, but because there was nothing to say. Apologies are nice, but they don't change what happened. They don't rebuild trust that's been shattered. They don't give back time that was wasted. Some things are just over, and that's okay. I'm learning to embrace endings as much as beginnings. At 63, I'm probably closer to the end of my story than the beginning. That's not morbid, it's just math. But the time I have left is mine to spend as I choose, with people who respect me, on projects that interest me, in ways that bring me satisfaction and peace. Alina and I are going to a gallery opening next Friday. She's interested in architectural photography, and there's an exhibit featuring urban landscapes from the 1960s through present day. It's the kind of thing Catherine would have found boring, would have gone to under protest and spent the whole time checking her phone. I'm looking forward to it, because here's what I've learned in these months since my marriage ended. You're never too old to start over. You're never too settled to demand better. You're never past the age where you deserve honesty, respect, and genuine connection. Catherine didn't see my move coming because she'd stopped seeing me at all. She'd looked at a man in his 60s and seen someone she could manage, deceive, and eventually discard when something more exciting came along. What she failed to see was that I'd spent 6 decades learning, growing, and becoming exactly the kind of man who doesn't accept disrespect quietly. The kind of man who plans carefully, acts decisively, and protects what's his. The kind of man who knows his value and refuses to settle for less. Derek didn't see it either until I showed him in my living room that afternoon, until I made it clear that age isn't weakness, it's accumulated strength. I'm sitting in my workshop now, coffee growing cold beside me, evening light slanting through the windows. The radio plays jazz softly in the background. I've got a new project starting next week, Mission-style bookcase that will require careful joinery and patience. It'll take months to complete properly. I have those months. I have time, I have skill, I have purpose. And I have the satisfaction of knowing that when the moment came when I had to choose between accepting betrayal or demanding respect, I made the right choice. Catherine thought I was too comfortable to leave, too old to start over, too settled to fight back. She was wrong on all counts. And that's the real lesson in all of this, not about marriage or betrayal or even justice. It's about knowing yourself well enough to recognize when you're being underestimated and being strong enough to prove those assumptions wrong. At 63, I'm not done. I'm not past my prime. I'm not ready to be dismissed, managed, or taken for granted. I'm just getting started on the next chapter. And this time, I'm writing it on my own terms. Welcome to the rest of my life. Subscribe to hear more stories of justice, respect, and the power that comes with age and wisdom. Because these stories, they're just beginning.